Hello, everyone. My name is Sujoy Roy. I am the CEO of VisitDays. Um, VisitDays is a technology solution focused in the admissions space in the United States to streamline the entire campus visit process. Just out of show of hands, how many people are parents here that have taken their kids out on a campus visit on a college campus in the US? How frustrating was it? Yeah, so that's what we're trying to solve. Essentially, the United States, as far as, when we look at global education, the United States, more than any other country, focuses on the physical interaction during the college search process as a primary indicator of whether or not a student is going to enroll in an institution or not, no matter if you're Harvard all the way down to any school in the country. So it becomes very paramount for the institution to nail it, but they very seldom do. What VisitDays essentially enables is that it enables a technology that sits on the university's website and makes it super simple for a parent or a student to book their visits. But we do way more than that. We handle everything from the nuts and bolts, from the point of scheduling, all the way getting that student to campus, essentially automating the entire campus visit process in the back end for the administrators. This wonderful couple they're my parents, and my story and the story of VisitDays sort of starts with this. I took this picture because I saw how much the world has changed. Like 10 years ago, they would have yelled at me for being at the dinner table on my phone, and now both of them were sort of engulfed in it. But this story was sort of the premise of why I started this company in the first place. Both my parents are professors. And I had come around 5 years ago, I'd come home. I was a consultant working sort of around the clock, traveling basically every day. And I'd come home one week to sort of hang out with my parents, sort of spend some time with them, and we were eating dinner together. And I was talking to my father about how his job was going, how my mom's job was going, just sort of chit-chatting. And they told me a story. My father told me a story that day that sort of started my entire journey off VisitDays. And the story was really simple. He was invited by his institution to be the keynote speaker at his college for their open house. So this is a large event, really important event from an enrollment perspective, and he is supposed to be the keynote speaker. So he was really excited, and he asked the admissions office for some analytics, some data. Who's coming? What is the audience going to look like? What should I be speaking about? He didn't get anything from them. So he kept reaching out, and he found the VP of enrollment that was his friend, and he asked him, what's going on? And he realized that there was only one person in the institution that was even monitoring the data in the first place, and more importantly, they weren't collecting much of it. So they were hosting this large event, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on executing this large event, yet they had not the basic elements of who was showing up. So my father, not knowing what to do, showed up at this open house, and he gave a presentation about the business school, which is where he was a professor of. Really quickly, he realized there was around 900 people in the audience, and really quickly he realized no one cared. Like, everyone was fidgety, no one was really interested in what he was saying, and he's a pretty decent speaker. And so he stopped his presentation, and the admissions office was sitting in the front row, and they kind of freaked out a little bit. And he stopped his presentation, he asked a simple question to the audience of 900 parents and students that came from literally 45 to 47 states to Connecticut, which is where his institution was, for this speech. And he asked them, how many of you are interested in the School of Business? And out of the sea of 900 people, not a single person raised their hand. And he was embarrassed. He looked at the admissions office and he said, what's going on? The institution that he works at is really well known for criminal justice, really simple. So he just asked them, how many of you are interested in the criminal justice program? And almost 70 to 80% of the room raised their hand. So at the dinner table, he was telling me, what was really crazy was that we spend so much time and effort as an institution trying to execute these visits because we know how much they mean for our institution. We're tuition dependent. If without these students, we're not going to survive. Yet, we just miss up something so simple. And he realized that the students had no idea who he was, and the institution had no idea who the students were. And somebody ought to solve that problem. And essentially, his son decided to do that 2 weeks after. Quit my job, and I went out on this journey where I tried to understand what the students' and parents' journeys, what their journey was. And what I realized was this was one of the largest decisions a parent or student were making. And it was a very high-touch decision. Very similar in terms of a purchase when you buy a home, when you buy a car, when you buy a wedding dress or a suit. You usually have to try it on before you make a purchase. And this made the entire stakes extremely high, both for the parents and students, because if they made a wrong decision, it was financially disastrous, but just emotionally quite a toll. And for the institution, if they weren't able to attract these students and isolate them in a way that was just smart and simple and effective, they weren't going to be able to meet their class. So at the end of the day, what we essentially did was that we realized that for most institutions, if you take, U.S. Newsweek, if most people in this room, I would guess, have studied in the United States. If you take U.S. Newsweek, the top 100 schools in the country have a high level of demand. They do not necessarily, they have a lot of applications coming in. They have a lot of interest overall. So these are the Harvards, the Yales, the Stanfords of the world. But there's 4,000 accredited institutions in the country, and most likely around 2,000 of them have a 4-year program. So the idea is that out of the top 100, there's a big fall off after that, where it becomes very difficult for most of these institutions to find students that have a genuine interest in the college. Today, it's easy for a student or a parent to, essentially apply to 15 to 20 schools in a matter of few clicks. So the level of intent and interest is extremely difficult for an institution to decipher. That's where the visit comes in. The visit is one piece of data point that is not being tracked really well, at least for the last 5 to 7 years by institutions, but was probably the biggest indicator of whether or not a student was likely to enroll. And what VisitDays focuses on is those specific students. So our emphasis is to get these students a very simple, effective, inviting scheduling experience. If they want to schedule for a visit to meet a professor, sit in a class, take a tour, any kind of activity that they would like to do on campus, organizing that, getting that executed, our software handles. So not only do we match the students with the specific faculty member that they might need to meet, but we make that booking available so that the student knows who they're going to meet, when they're going to meet them, and we essentially communicate to that student till the day of the visit, check them in, and before they leave, we conduct a survey to understand their level of intent and interest in the institution. Using all of that data, we're able to tell the institutions which students they need to be focused on from an enrollment perspective, and for the students, they have the access that would have been very difficult to get previously. You would have to know someone, you would have to know an uncle that knows a professor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But VisitDays breaks that completely down. We essentially say, if a student wants to do something, we make our software find the individuals at the institution that will make that fulfilled and get that done for the student. So this is kind of the UI of what the experience essentially looks like. Kind of think of it almost as an open table, a reservation. Really simple. 2 clicks, doesn't take long, gets it done. If a parent wants, and these are the other features for us specifically, if a student wants to meet another student on campus, if anyone from an international country like China or India is coming down to visit a campus and wants to meet someone else that is part of that community, they can do so. So that's kind of what the solution is, and if you have any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to answer them. Take care.